Al, we're live. All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Tabor Town Council meeting for November 22nd, 2021. Call the meeting to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council adopts the agenda as amended to allow for the opportunity to undertake closed session items prior to the timing of delegations at 5 p.m.
All right, thank you. Amended agenda on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. On to item number 3, adoption of minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of the regular meeting of council November 8th, 2021. Mr. Tebow.
These are just the minutes from the previous meeting for council's consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councilor Sorensen.
I make a motion that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on November 8th, 2021 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 4, business arising. Item 4.1, downtown sidewalk improvements. Mr. Tebow.
This item's coming before council. This was a previous list on the standing item list, and Mr. Gary Scheer is going to speak to it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Thank you. From council's motion, we looked at all the downtown sidewalks, the paving stone areas. Just to give a little bit of background, they were basically installed in 2006, roughly over the 4 or 5 years. Normal lifespan of paving stones, 20 to 50 years, depending on what type of application it's for, maintenance, things like that. Usually in a commercial industrial area, 20 to 30 years is a good lifespan on it. It seems that the surfaces come off. It depends on the type of de-icer it uses in wintertime. It has a huge effect on the spalling effect of the paving stones. So first thing we looked at was the repair areas. We figured there's about 285 square meter of repairs needed. This involved removal, some replacement, re-leveling, things like that. The total cost is estimated about $95,000. We added a little bit extra because over the winter things settle, things grow, stuff like that. And this could be done in the spring or summer of 2022. So the second thing we looked at was a replacement of all the areas. Can we bring up a map, please, of showing all the areas to be replaced? It's a large volume. It's a replacement of the paving stone alone. And you could, dependent on the type of paving stone council wants to check, color, the durability. So there's a lot of areas to be replaced, and we looked at the bob outs too. So that's about almost $1.1 million for the total replacement. So it's not a cheap fix, that's by any means. So then as per council's direction, we looked at colored concrete in those areas, the same areas as shown. It's just under $1 million. That could be probably reduced a bit if it was normal concrete, not the colored concrete. You could probably drop about 10% off of that. So other items we looked at was maybe trying to look at grants. There's a community revitalization fund that we applied for the other bulb out. It could be up to 75%. Now when they say up to 75%, it might be 25, it might be 50, it might be 75. It depends how they evaluate the grant. Then we could, council could say, let's do it over a few years. So I just gave a map of over 3 years and what locations could be repaired or replaced if it was paving stone or concrete. Area 1 was $460,000, Area 2 is $260,000, Area 3 about $230,000. So lots of things to consider. One thing I didn't add in costs for, if council just wanted to make the repairs up to the ends of the businesses and leave the bulb outs alone, because they look good, they're in pretty good shape, and just replace that areas with concrete. So there's a lot of things to discuss. One thing we didn't look at was street light replacement. Council maybe wanted decorative street lights downtown. So that means that spacing, any decorative spacing would be closer together rather than the cobras they have now. And you might want to go underground for power. Right now, the power is overhead going from light post to light post. So lots of things for council's consideration, and I'll let it up for council discussion.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, I was just curious, like what you talked about at the very end there, we're just doing it in front of the businesses so they won't have any issues with keeping the snow and ice clear and then leaving the bulb outs as they were. I was going to ask if that was possible, and you've answered that saying yes. So would there be any subsurface issues, you think, that might interfere with, especially now that you bring up replacing lights with underground? That obviously would be a huge undertaking for subsurface, or is that already done?
No, that would have to be done, so that'd be an additional cost. And if you want to go decorative lighting, actually said they're closer together, so there's an added cost. I think we looked at this once before, and I can't remember the cost, I couldn't find it. But we could bring those costs back for, an overall project consideration for council.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
I think the maintenance of the sidewalks is important, and it seems like it's time perhaps to look at it. What is the lifespan of the colored concrete in comparison to the brick?
It probably runs to about 30 years too. Now, it depends. If you say colored, we're just doing a broom finish. You can get stamp finish, you can get stencil finish. That all increases the pricing. But if we're looking at the roughness of the concrete and you just want a broom finish, I understand it's hard to clean with businesses. They didn't like the idea of cleaning it all the time. Any person in a walker or wheelchair, it's rough on them. There's no doubt about that. So that has to be taken into consideration. But right now we price it just as colored broom finish.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The paving stones look fantastic, but I think the idea of laying paving stones in this part of the world with our frost heaves and that isn't a smart idea. I think the very least we should be doing is replacing the stones that are popping up in that, because there are some tripping hazards downtown. The other concern, we talk about the work. Some of those old buildings need new water lines probably replaced. So there's a lot more to it than just laying concrete. So it would be quite expensive, I would imagine. I would strongly recommend against the stamped concrete because it's very slippery. The brush finish with a nice color would be my favorite. And I have had experience with wheelchairs and walkers on pavement, and it's very uncomfortable. Even canes you can hook. So the bulb outs, I think they would probably be fine, but the sidewalks in front of some of these businesses are getting quite rough, and we may be liable for some personal injury.
So
Right,
when these were all done in 2006, they did look at all the curb stops. They replaced majority of them. They looked at the water lines. They were in pretty good shape. So that was done. We would re-look at them again just to make sure we get enough lifespan out of them. But yes, that would be part of it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Scheer, thank you for a job well done in investigating this, Gary. It's very comprehensive. I appreciate that. In your view, sir, if we go with option number 4, which directs administration to replace those stones that are in really bad shape for $95,000, which is not cost prohibitive in my mind, is there a liability issue as a result of that, or are you happy with the results of $95,000 fix?
I think we're happy with the results. Under the MGA, all we have to do is make sure that we get our fixes done when we can according to budgets. And that's what we're doing, because all the sidewalks throughout the whole town are assessed every year as per the MGA. So we're going through the proper process.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify, Mr. Scheer, just so this $95,000 estimate will cover the most problematic areas
Yes.
that have been brought to our attention, your attention. And that's what's in that total figure mix. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did discuss a little bit about grants, applying for grants to replace the whole sidewalk. I think perhaps we should get a little more information on that before we spend the initial $95,000 band-aiding the problem. So I would suggest that we look for more information in that regards.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council directs administration to add the downtown sidewalk repairs to the 2022 capital budget at a cost of $95,000 and apply for grant funding for the downtown sidewalk improvement project.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilor McLean?
I'm sorry, but what we look
Sorry,
at.
Councilor Bruin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilor McLean's up.
I just had a question about the capital budget. Then, if we're gonna put 95,000 into it, like how much do we have that's in that budget?
So I would refer that back to Mr. Arwell. We had that discussion.
Capital budget has already been passed by council 2022 capital project. So normally what happens is if there is any addition to the capital project already passed, it has to come through council resolution, then it will be added to the list. Otherwise, the listing of the projects for the 2022 is already passed and it's already been funded.
I see.
We know exactly what comes from, how much comes from reserves, how much comes from other grants. So in this case, depending if it's 95,000 and we apply for the grant, 75% of that will be about what? About 71,000. So if we get that, bingo, we use that one first before we think of the difference coming from the reserves.
So, Mr. Orr, I think we were going to do the fix and then apply for the grant for the replacement. So, how much do we have left in the capital reserves based off of the capital budget for 2022?
So, thank you for reminding me. Now, contributions every year, each department contributes money towards capital, and it's normally about 2 million. And this year, the capital listing, we used only about 1 million. So we do have enough to cover that if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bruin?
I think Mr. Oro answered my question there, but I just don't want to go ahead and spend 95,000 just to go back in and replace it all again with cement. So I think we really want to look at what grants are available before we commit so much money to something just a Band-Aid.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sorensen?
Well, I'm just thinking for a liability stance, do these sidewalks need to be repaired for next year?
They should be done, and we had looked at doing some in-house, yes. But the overall fix is a lot more than what we have in the budget, that's for sure.
Like some of it was already
Some
allocated
of it was in there,
to-
yes.
All right, thank you. All right, once again, we do have a motion on the table. Councilor Rudd?
Yeah, just for clarification, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's, so the repairs only amount to re-leveling, taking out, putting in new ones and that, and, yeah.
So
Okay.
some of the blocks may be still usable, still in good shape. You'll see a lot of the spalling happens when eaves coming over or coming over the business and the water dripping down. You'll see that paving stone is eroding away. It's called spalling. And you'll see it for a small section like this. So those will all be replaced. But there are some on both sides that can be reused. So it'd be re-leveling it and some replacement and reusing.
So would that be satisfactory then to the business
Yes.
owners who are having a concern?
Well, there's another, I guess council might want to consider maybe taking a survey of downtown businesses and do they want concrete or paving stone?
All right, thank you. All right, once again, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councilor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if Councillor Beckering would consider a friendly amendment to add to direct administration to survey downtown businesses as to which type of sidewalk they would prefer.
Councilor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would, Councilor Firth. I would accept that.
All right, thank you. We do have a friendly amendment motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Councilor Sorensen?
Well, can we just address the street lighting? Can I make a motion that administration looks into additional costs in the street lighting and bring this back to a future meeting?
I think, just to be fair, thanks, Councilor Sorensen. Mr. Tebow, I think that would be more of a standing item suggestion, Right, so if you don't mind, Councilor Sorensen, we just bring that up again at the standing item timeframe, please.
Yeah, I mean, so do I repeal that or whatever?
All right, thank you. All right, on to item number 5, bylaws, item 5.1, St. Mary's School micro apiary. Mr. Tebow.
So we've got a bylaw amendment being requested by St. Mary's School. Carrie Van Ham, I keep saying that wrong, sorry, Carrie, is going to present on that. And I believe we have Mark DeJong electronically participating from St. Mary's.
Thank you. Good evening. Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
So this proposed bylaw is going to be brought back to Council for consideration, resulting from Council's May 10th, 2021 decision requesting additional information. Following administration's research, we've amended the bylaw to address concerns regarding control, safety, and animal welfare, while allowing the school districts the opportunity to implement this type of programming. Administration believes we found an acceptable middle ground in the wording of the bylaw to allow school programs such as these to occur safely within the community. Also, since that time, St. Mary's School has canvassed their neighbors and obtained school board clarification and approval, which was required in Council's motion at that time. While administration has also reviewed municipalities that have this type of program to bring back the bylaw in its proposed final version for Council's consideration. So some of the municipalities that were researched were the City of Brooks, Athabasca, and the Township of Brock in Ontario. So Principal DeJong is on the line in anticipation of any further questions from Council related to the educational program that they are intending to offer. And I'm also available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. DeJong, welcome. You hear us all right?
I can hear you fine. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. DeJong, what did your survey show, please, of the neighborhood?
Sorry.
What did the neighborhood survey show? What did it tell you?
So we surveyed about 100 of our neighbors, roughly. We got feedback from 4 who were very positive and encouraging the motion, or encouraging the program to go forward, and we didn't hear from anyone else.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councilor Rudd?
Not so much for Mr. DeJong, but just in reviewing it was a very comprehensive work and a lot went into it and a lot of things were thought of and covered off. And I was happy to see that there was an insurance review done and such. So what I was wondering is if there needs to be some indemnification clause for the town of Tabor, considering a lot of the work that was done was around mitigation of any kind of liability, especially checking up with insurance and such, and just curious if maybe that's something that we want to consider is some sort of indemnification. And
all right, thank you, Mr. Tebow. Ms. Van Ham, either one?
Administration would have to take that away. I can't answer that at this moment in time, but we could certainly look into that and report back.
All right, thank you. Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for Mr. DeJong. How soon do you anticipate having this project running?
We're looking at hopefully approaching it in the spring. It came about last year out of a surplus from travel expenses that we didn't use courtesy of COVID. And we do run a surplus every year at St. Mary's, and so I'm anticipating that we'll be able to move ahead with this with regards to funding. So we are looking at the spring, getting it up and running.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Dion. What concerns me is out of 100 surveys sent out, only 4 came back and they're all positive.
Actually, there's only 4. Sorry, not 14.
Yeah, 4 came back, sorry. That came back positive. I've had experience with beehives. We had numerous beehives on our farm, One situation, I had a worker living within half a mile, and his wife was allergic to the bees, so I had to request the hives to be moved. Personally, I would not want a beehive in my neighborhood because they can be quite bothersome if they're in your garden all the time when you're working, and for children getting stung. I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of beehives in the town.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Sorensen.
I think it's a great opportunity for some educational learning. My question is, what happens when the program is not running during the school year with the hives and so forth?
We have people who, within the town, so staff members, who would be responsible for taking care of the bees over the course of the summer, and that would be the plan. The two individuals who are running the program with the students, it would be their job to keep it up over the summer.
All right, thank you. Any other questions whatsoever? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No more questions, but I'm prepared to make a motion at this time.
Just if I could just interrupt you just for 1 second, just wanted to inquire just to either Councillor Rudd and or Mr. Tebow. With Councillor Rudd's inquiry, are we still able to carry on with this, or does that make this a little premature?
I think you could carry on with this and we can come back in good time. If there needed to be an adjustment, we could come back with an adjustment.
All right. Councillor Rudd, you comfortable with that also?
Well, haven't heard the motion yet, so, but if the motion is going to consider indemnification, then I think that's a good idea. I really like this idea, I think, but that's got a bit of concern in, hearing what Mr. Bruin had to say.
All right, thank you, fair enough. Councillor Firth?
Thank you. My motion is not going to include that because I think it's, we've got some time. If the project isn't going to be up and running until the spring, that'll give administration time to bring it back before it's an issue. So I move that council gives first reading to Exotic and Wild Animal Bylaw 23-2021.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, carried. Thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll proceed with the motion then for the second time.
All right.
Council gives second reading to Exotic and Wild Animal Bylaw 23-2021.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. Carried. All right, and the third required motion? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives third and final reading to Exotic and Wild Animal Bylaw 23-2021.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Pardon me? Did you have a question?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did not have a question, but we just need to unanimously agree to proceed to third and final reading.
That's correct, yeah.
That's okay.
That's correct, thank you, yeah. So I'll just call for that motion again, just to be sure. Item number 3, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. So that is carried, however, it cannot go further. Motion is carried, but we cannot go further, correct, Mr. Tebow?
Yeah, we'll have to save the third reading for a next council meeting.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeJong. Was he off the air already?
My pleasure, thanks, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, on to item 5.2, proposed procedural bylaw 14-2021. Mr. Tebow.
Administration has brought this bylaw forward for council's discussion and consideration. We're looking for the 3 readings tonight as well on this one.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Sorensen?
Just under Agenda Review Committee, I was wondering if it also can include regular council members to participate.
Mr. Tebow?
Sorry, I'm unsure of the question.
Councillor Sorensen?
The Agenda Review Committee, states that it means a committee consisting of the mayor, the deputy mayor, and the chief administrative officer, along with administrative staff. I was wondering if, by chance, one of us councillors wanted to attend the review committee agenda review, if that's possible.
Councillor Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councilor Sorensen, it's not been historic that a council member attends a agenda review meeting. Just recently, as a matter of fact, up to about a year and a half ago, we only had the mayor and the CEO do the review of the agenda. So we included the deputy mayor since that time, correct, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct.
And I think it seems to me that it's working really well. However, if for some reason the deputy mayor cannot attend, or the mayor for that matter, I think a council could possibly replace that person. That wouldn't be a problem. And should that be in the procedural bylaw? I don't think so.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Becker. Just to clarify, myself, Mr. T. White, I think all things considered, even with that, if we go with that, any council member could still attend if there's some ask or need to do so, correct?
Yep, I believe that would be correct. There's no reason why they couldn't.
Right, all right, perfect, thank you. All right, any other questions? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, so just with our training that we had last has it been 2 weeks ago? I really liked the suggestion of having discussion time during meetings for council to discuss things. So I'm wondering if we can add that in under 6.16 to have time for council to not necessarily make decisions, but discuss things, because I feel like as a council, we don't really get that opportunity other than in here where we just are asking questions sometimes, but we're asked to make decisions. And so I felt like that was something that we could benefit from.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
So probably to add it in today is not a possibility, but
Right, no, I just meant going forward.
yep, we can certainly have a look at that going forward, at how we'd like to incorporate it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, wouldn't the standing items really cover a lot of that? We can discuss any ongoing issues or concerns there.
That could be added to a stand agenda item, absolutely. But in this case, we're still dealing with the bylaw at face value, I guess. So, Mr. Tebow, any preference that way, your end?
Administration would probably like to come back with a few options and pros and cons as to why we would wish it to be a standing item or something identified separately. We haven't taken it upon ourselves since that meeting to flesh all that out. So
Okay, all right, thank you. So with Councillor McLean's suggestion and or ask, that would be appropriate just to bring this all back to an additional meeting with some further options in relation to what she just mentioned. Correct?
yep, that would be fine.
All right. Any other questions arising? All right. With that, we don't need a motion going forward with that, correct? Just understood that will be brought back. Next meeting was enough time to deal with that?
One of the alternatives is to request further information.
All right, so you'd just like a further information motion on the table? Sure. Okay, we can certainly accommodate that if somebody's willing. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion that council may request further information from administration.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Great, thank you.
No, he didn't.
Oh, sorry, did I miss it? All right, one opposed. All right, carried. All right, on to action items, item 6.1, Saia County Kenya invitation. Mr. Tebow.
I'll let you, Mr. Mayor, speak to the history on this, but there is a request for some funds from Saia County for a meet and greet.
All right, thank you. And I wonder if I can speak to some of this and then also maybe need a little assistance from some of my fellow councilors from the previous council would be helpful as well as Mr. John Orwa, who was actually the catalyst to this initial visit back in 2018 when we had a County delegation attend here to the town of Tabor for, I believe, a 10-day visit. Mr. Orwa, is that correct? So basically, they are interested in the irrigation, wastewater, and infrastructure information that's available here in the town of Tabor and looking to improve things for their area as well. So I believe you all gone through your package. There's quite a lot of information that's involved with that. They were here for the 10 days as was stated and had a very good visit informational session here. And we're actually looking to do a twinning process way back. In 2018 was the original ask through the memorandum of understanding, I believe. Mr. Tebow, is that correct?
I think it was initiated back then, yes.
Right, okay. So this has just been enhanced since that time frame. So if anybody else wants to add anything, fellow councilors or Mr. Orwa, certainly feel free to do so at this time. Councilor McLean?
I just have a question. What does twinning do, really? I just don't understand the whole background of it, so I'm just trying to understand. Like, I understand that then, like, they get the support from us, but what does twinning exactly mean, and how does that relationship work? If you could just provide a little bit more.
All right. Well, with us, with the town of Tabor, we've been a twinning location for the Higashi-Omi for the last 40 years. And so that's more of a cultural and/or educational component, I believe, was attached to that. Correct, Mr. Tebow?
Yes, there is different reasons why we might twin with different
Right.
places, each one having their own reason for wanting to twin.
Yeah. So in this case, we are currently in that 40-year twinning process with Higashi-Omi, Japan, and has worked very well since then. And in this case, this is more of a informational assistance for dealing with a third world country with some of their lacking capabilities on infrastructure and dealing with irrigation under wastewater. And Mr. Orwa, I know you've got some to add to that, if you don't mind adding a little bit of information, some of the history there and some of the clarification on just how difficult some of the third world living conditions are in Sayah County and area.
Well, I might not speak at length at the difficulties because I've been in North America for a period of time, but I can recall a few things. I know in the last conversation when we had that conversation with the governor, there were some specific areas that he had requested to be looked into, and one of them was irrigation. Looking at the tour they had here and the irrigation equipments and those kind of things that they believe they could use out there and the technology that is out here. The other thing was they are looking at the wastewater. And I think one of the major areas is they did look at the town of Tabor wastewater plant. And I think we also looked at the one in city of Calgary and Banff as well. So that was also another area of interest. And of course, importing that technology across to help. Apart from that one, they're also looking at recycling and, how to manage the waste as well. And I think they were impressed with the kind of technology that's out here that they also wanted to borrow from here. That particular area, of course, there is the Lake Victoria, one of the largest freshwater lakes, and they felt that with that kind of technology, water is not an issue, but how to reach the consumers. And I believe that technology is what they wanted to tap from this part of the world.
Yes, thank you. Just to confirm there, that's with their, I believe it was 5 asks altogether with their original letter earlier this past summer. But that was a big one related to that, the twinning for one and or the collaboration opportunities there and to assist in that their irrigation wastewater concerns, as well as the they had interest in a dump truck we had that they could maybe make use of for their benefit as well. And as you said, that in their area, they don't have that capability, as I understand that, to be able to do that with the expertise we have with the irrigation and infrastructure information attachments here, correct?
That's correct. And to talk about the dump truck itself, I think we've already looked at that with the Public Works Department, what needs to happen there. And I remember them saying that they'll shoulder the cost. If that thing is in good condition and can be used, they'll shoulder the cost to ferry that thing from here to Kenya. So that's also an area that they were also looking at. And I'm still working with Mr. Shea alongside that request, because we have to think of expertise the other side as well. We're just sending something out there that might turn out to be a monument. Or what about the spare parts? We are looking at a lot of things, the macro view of the whole thing. So in this equation, we're just looking at the whole picture, because remember, again, back into your question, when you're talking about twinning, there's also that element of governance. And I think that is part of the address that the mayor had I can't remember, maybe 2 months ago. The mayor had the opportunity to address the assembly back there. And I think one of the major areas was on the governance side, which of course, some of the things they saw, the proceedings, see how things were going when they were out here. So it's look at it from a macro sense, the bird's eye view in this case.
Councillor Rudd.
In terms of the assistance on irrigation, have we approached our local irrigation people? Have we talked maybe with the MD? Does that expertise lie exclusively within the town, or is that expertise probably is more in the hands of those organizations and the larger picture here, rather than just within the municipal confines of the town? I just wonder if those inquiries have been made, or if we went ahead with it, that's how we would approach doing it, is getting our expertise from local experts.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow, anything to add to that?
Just one clarification, that we were talking about a garbage truck and not a dump truck to go to Sayang County.
Oh, all right, sure. Yeah, that's correct.
And I think from an expertise perspective, there was a motion back a while ago that Mr. Mayor and myself were looking at, that was asking administration to come up with some kind of a estimate on those costs. So I think we still need some information to be able to create that estimate as far as distances and sizes and things like that. But that's what we were tasked with previously. That's what administration was tasked with previously.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure, of course, to attend most of the sessions with the delegation of Sayang County in 2018. I was very impressed with them. They're very professional. From the stories that we were told and the facts that were shown, it seemed to me that it's a rather poor county in relation to Southern Alberta for sure. And I know we're journeying into a bit of an unknown issue here. But I think if we feel any empathy at all, I think we should perhaps proceed on an exploratory mission with the mayor attending and perhaps a member of administration. From what I understand, that the governor of Sayang County will cover the cost of the mayor attending, and at least the accommodation and the food, maybe not plane ticket. But I think, Mr. Mayor, that we should at least explore this possibility. And the question, Councilor Rodhead, makes sense. We're not the experts in irrigation for sure, but this should be exploratory, and we can come to decisions after the mayor reports back and possibly a member of administration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
That kind of is a lead way into my question as to if administration has looked into a cost yet as to what we're talking about if we do send the mayor and one additional person.
Mr. Tebow?
Administration hasn't had time since this had arrived for us to actually get some costing around that. So the motion is worded the way it is so that administration can come back with some identifying some costing for travel. As mentioned, Saya was looking after everything once the members were there, but to get there is on us. So yeah, we'd have to research that yet.
All right, thank you. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate to look into that a little further, and or some of the irrigation asks that were on the table today, as per what's been in the previous motion, it would be helpful to benefit all council members making this decision in the end. Mr. Tebow?
So I think alternative number 1 would cover that, and we could certainly come back with something.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
So I'd be prepared to make a motion,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So I make a motion that council choose to request additional information in regards to Mayor Prokop and administration staff to the anticipated costs to attend.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have to be very careful we're not getting in over our head with sponsoring things like this with irrigation and basically public works. There's government programs that we're obviously probably not aware of to help aid here. And I think I agree with the motion that Councillor Sorensen made, but we have to be careful we're not putting the cart before the horse here, because there's a lot involved with working with another country. I also attended the delegation, and it was fantastic. Realizes how fortunate we are here with what we have. And if we could help them, I'm all in favor of it, but the cost could be immense. So, but I would like to investigate more, and I think it's something to pursue, but we really have to look hard at this.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.2, public auction reserve bid. Mr. Tebow.
Looks like we're going to get Donna, Mrs. Wise, to speak on this. This is just a typical process that happens each year.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
We have 7 properties that are in tax arrears and are to proceed to the next step, which is tax auction, public auction. And we're looking for council to set the reserve bids and the conditions of sale. So we haven't actually had an auction for the past at least 15 years. We hope to not have another one, but we have to go through the process and just in case.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, none whatsoever, so I'm prepared to make a motion. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also hope we don't have to have an auction, but I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right.
I move that council approves the following conditions pertaining to the March 15th, 2022 public tax sale of property tax accounts 425-1180, 505-2250, 5144-180, 525-7145, 585-2390, 585-5130, and 604-4110. Attached values for each roll number to be set as the reserve bid, these being the assessed values as provided by the town's assessors, and terms of the sale are 10% cash deposit balance within 45 working days.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Beckert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tongue in cheek, Councillor Firth. Have you read the tax recovery guide in Alberta?
I skimmed it, Councillor Beckering.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6.3, Municipal District of Tabor Council appointments. Mr. Tebow.
So much like our organizational meeting, the MD of Tabor also had theirs, and this is just in front of council for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right. Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Sorensen.
I look forward to working with the MD councillors, and I make a motion that council recognizes the Municipal District of Tabor's appointments to the Joint Economic Development Committee and the Intermunicipal Development Committee. And on the basis of the recommendation of the MD of Tabor, council appoints municipal district representatives to town boards as follows. Town of Tabor Rec Board, Brian Hildebrand and John Turcado as the alternate. Town of Tabor Arts and Heritage Committee, Tamara Minega and Merrill Harris as the alternate. And Tabor Municipal Library Board, Tamara Minega.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.4, policy proposed for repeal, senior manager's residency requirement. Mr. Tebow.
Mayor and council, administration regularly reviews policies. This particular policy has come to our attention just based on some changes of the landscape from the workforce, and we'd like council's consideration on the content.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, does this include that the CEO, though, does reside in the town of Tabor?
Mr. Tebow?
Yep, this particular policy speaks to senior management, and the CAO is not affected by this policy. In fact, any senior manager, when we do an employment contract, could have that stipulation in there, and administration would look at that each time we do hire a senior position. But the CAO, in my opinion, and I believe is in the best interest of Tabor, should be residing in the town of Tabor. So this does not include the CAO.
Right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Can I follow up?
Sure, you bet, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Tebow, for your answer. I think it's, I would agree with this policy. There's some very talented people. We don't want to limit ourselves to hiring because they're not able or want to live in the town. But I think it's very important that our staff is in town because it means more when they're making decisions and enforcing some of our rules. So I'm all in favor of people that want to work for the town to live in the town, but there has to be some leeway, I believe.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you. I agree with what Councillor Bruin has said. My only concern with repealing this policy is the message that it sends. I understand that legally it's very difficult to enforce and that really as a municipality or as an employer we shouldn't be telling people where they should have to live. But it does, it's preferable obviously if the people that work for the town of Tabor would like to live in the town of Tabor because then you become part of the community, maybe you understand the issues that the community faces a little bit better. So I would like to recommend that if we do end up repealing this policy, that we emphasize during the hiring process that it would be preferable for employees to reside in the town of Tabor, if at all possible.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Tebow, has administration canvassed other communities outside, perhaps regarding this particular policy, what their take is on it? And I do know, like Council First said, that you're probably skating on very thin ice to enforce it. But at the same time, have you any idea what other communities do, sir?
So administration hasn't specifically that I'm aware of gone out and asked this of a bunch of other municipalities. I can speak from my personal experience that my last employer strongly recommended that you be there, but they had also explored the idea that it was very difficult to enforce legally. And proximity to my last location to a larger center was much different than here. So really, the short answer is no, we haven't gone out and canvassed a whole bunch of places that are similar to location and size as Tabor.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
I'm just wondering, like, a little bit of background of why administration wants to repeal this. Is it because they're having trouble filling positions within the town of Tabor? Is that like the biggest concern, or is it that we're just finding people that live just around Tabor, and so that's why we don't want, I don't know, like I'm just trying to understand a little bit of the background of the policy.
Mr. Tebow.
So I can certainly speak to the last few recruitments that I've been a part of. For our senior level positions, we're finding that there's not a lot of a qualified local talent for these positions, and we've seen people applying all the way from Ontario, even way further east than that, Nova Scotia, and we have had some folks turn us down. One with the position we have open currently, because there's no incentive for them to move here, and they're established someplace else. They're willing to commute, but to actually move here, sometimes folks aren't as attracted to that for whatever reason. I mean, sometimes it's to do with their kids that are in university or college, and that's not offered here, and half an hour away you have to drive. So it is about that. It's the attraction of some senior level staff, as much as we would always want people to live here and to move here, unless we provide some incentive to do that, housing incentive or some other incentive. It's difficult to attract those senior folks here.
All right, thank you, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have another question. Do we not have supporting staff that could maybe get promoted into those kind of positions, that maybe want to have that opportunity for promotion? Or are we just recruiting for specifically that position and we're looking for people with a certain skill set to fill those roles? Or do we have staff that can be trained or educated a little bit or guided to be kind of move up into those kind of roles?
Councillor McLean, that is a typical process, and it's always open for internal folks to apply. Historically, again, for the last few I've seen, I can tell you that there hasn't been internal folks apply for some of these senior roles, but certainly we would always want to have that sort of a succession plan and the ability to take people from within, but sometimes simply the duration or the skill set just isn't there.
All right, thank you. And just to clarify, that was also as a result of some changes. It's dealt with the emergency management format, correct? And which is now under Chief Munshaw's umbrella, correct, to deal with that side of things compared to what it has been previous?
Yeah, some of the history I was told was that there was a tie to the emergency management having to be here in a certain time frame. That being said, that did move over to our fire chief, and with the mayor and the CEO being available in town, those are the three folks that would always respond initially to something. And any director who wasn't here could easily get on the phone and get boots on the ground. And when the director does arrive, I don't think there's anything we're missing from an emergency management standpoint because of it.
Right. All right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, we all prefer that senior management, if they would apply for a position with the town of Tabor, would take residence in the town of Tabor. That's a natural thing, I believe. At the same time, we should not constrict the possibility of quality people not coming here because they have to live here. So I think to repeal this policy is probably the right thing to do, keeping in mind that job offers you can write in there strongly urge or encourage people to move to the town of Tabor when they consider a position. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right. Thank you.
Move that council repeals senior management residence requirement policy C-8.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Rudd, you had a question also?
Well, thank you for the motion. I respect that motion. But like you, I don't like this at all. But I see that it must be, I've been around the law long enough to understand where we would sit, and but it's a bit irritating that the town is loyal to the employee by giving them the job and the security and the benefits and the pay, and yet the individual can't be loyal back by at least gracing us with their presence. It just doesn't sit very well, but the legal aspects of it would tend to outweigh that. unfortunately. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.5, electronic information access. Mr. Tebow.
So again, we just have some policy update, and we'll have Al speak on that for us.
All right.
Good afternoon,
Good
Your Worship,
afternoon.
members of council. Today we have a 3-year review for one of our policy, the electronic information access termination. We didn't make any changes to the policy, but we attached it for council. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Getting off easy, Al.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sorensen.
I'd just be prepared to make a motion.
All right, absolutely.
I make a motion that the council approves the electronic information access termination policy CS-IT-4 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.6, password management policy. Mr. Tebow.
So everyone's got a second chance to poke at Al. There's another policy that he'll speak to.
All right.
This one, it's actually a new update following the recommendation from our security test we conducted last month. They're recommending to change some of our policy for passwords, make it longer, more complicated. So of course we have to bring it to council for approval. And if you have any question, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sorensen.
I just would like to use the password that I've had for the past 24 years. So, yeah.
All right, Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right,
I motion that council approves the password management policy CS-IT-7 as presented.
all right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.7, resignation of Arts and Heritage Committee. Mr. Tebow.
Just some correspondence that was put in front of council for your discussion and consideration.
All right, thank you. Councilor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prepared to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
I'll move that council accepts the resignation of Ms. Shayla Farrell from the Arts and Heritage Committee with regret, and council thanks Ms. Farrell for her numerous contributions to the town of Tabor during her tenure on the Arts and Heritage Committee.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to department reports. We'll go through those individually. If anybody has any questions, just please stop me accordingly. First off is Recreation Department reports. HR Department report. Councilor Rudd.
Yeah, I'm just curious, seeking some clarification on, it affects the recreation and the planning department as well. On the hiring, the job seeking a replacement for the planning department and the recreation department and combining those roles. I just wondered what the rationale was there in doing that, and if the person that we're seeking would have the requisite certifications to perform both of those jobs. It's kind of a rare mix of disciplines, and I just curious how that's going to be carried out, or whether we're going to get a certified person to carry out our planning function.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tebow.
So I'd like to tell you that we're going to get a certified person for a planner. Part of the previous policy repeal was in hopes that we might get the motion the way it went tonight, because there is some applicants who could satisfy that. I'll agree that it's a unique combination. Not everyone is going to have both of those. Typically that only happens in smaller centers, and even for smaller centers, this is a unique combination. It was based on a directorship level, and typically directors go over multiple departments. And if you're a director of something, you don't typically need to know all the operational tidbits of how everything works. While that is very helpful for someone in a directorship type role. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of this. We do have, I believe we're sitting at 15 or 18 applicants, and we have 4 names that we're going to be able to at least move forward with from an interview perspective.
All right, thank
Well,
you.
Thanks.
Any other questions related to Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, just thanks for that answer, and, you know, I look forward to meeting Superman when he comes here to do this job. But, you know, tongue in cheek a little, but, you know, you look at, for me anyway, going through these department reports and seeing the volume of work and assuming the quality is there, I'm really impressed with what goes on. And when I read what's happening in recreation and then read what's happening in planning and then try and envision a person who's going to have that umbrella authority over both of them, like, wow, that's going to be a handful for him. But I suppose if it's just perhaps more administrative than it is having the operational knowledge, I suppose a person could do that. So I look forward to meeting this person. And good luck.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Plan and Economic Development Department reports. Fire Department reports. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Montreal, Chief. Congratulations for being promoted Chair to the Core Competency Committee with the Alberta Fire Chiefs Association. My question to you is, of course, sir, is the town of Tabor being reimbursed for your time spent?
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. That is mainly done on the extra volunteer side of my day, and make up the rest of the time if it is chosen in their daytime hours, in the night to create the rest of my work. But that's one of the volunteer aspects of my world.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
I'd just like to thank the fire chief and the whole staff to participating in the Winter Festival and hoisting that huge, beautiful tree in the center of town. So it was beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much for having us. We really enjoyed it. Second annual. It's great to see you.
All right, absolutely. Thank you again. All right, moving on to Engineering and Public Works Department reports. Water and wastewater reports. Councillor Sorensen.
I just had a question in regards to submitting the town's wastewater system approval renewal application, and then just thinking that it's not going to be approved, but maybe it's a formality.
It is just a formality. Alberta Environment's probably 2 years behind on their assessments and approvals. So that's why that's in there. We're just letting you know that we're just going to get a temporary approval until they can review it and approve it. That's all.
All right, thank you. Next is Finance Department reports. Administrative Services reports and CAO reports. Councillor Sorensen.
Just one more thing. I'd like to thank the CAO for participating in the Halloween Howl. It was noticed that you and your son participated, and so it's great to see you out in the community.
All right, thank you. Any other questions related to any reports there? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the department reports for information.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.9, Council Code of Conduct follow-up. Written public apology from Councillor Bruin. Mr. Thibault.
So this was asked of administration with respect to activities from Mr. Bruin. We do have a letter from Mr. Bruin. And it's up to yourselves how you'd like to proceed with that.
All right, you have that letter present, able to put that on screen, Mr. Thibault?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would seem to me that it would be proper at this time for Councilor Bruin to read the written apology so everybody can hear it, please.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll gladly read it for the public and council to hear it from my mouth. I'll start with Mr. Mayor and fellow councilors. I'm writing to apologize and take full responsibilities for my action at the October 25th, 2012 Town of Tabor Council meeting. I also wish to apologize to the Town of Tabor staff as well as the residents of Tabor. I appreciate the opportunity to represent Tabor and will continue to do so to the very best of my abilities. Respectfully, myself.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Bruin. I think you should say 2021 as opposed to 2012. You said 2012.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
All right, it's clarified in the written portion, but Councillor Bruin does recognize that as 2021, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. I misread that.
Perfect, thank you. All right, any other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion for information purposes? Councillor Rudd?
I'll make a motion that council accept Councilor Bruin's written apology as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 610, Mayor and Council reports. Start with Councillor Firth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended all the meetings I was required to this month, including the Tabor Chamber of Commerce, the Arts and Heritage meeting, at which we had some great discussion about working on ways to promote and enhance the arts in the town of Tabor. I also attended the Door to the World event put on by Tabor and District Community Adult Learning Association. It was very well done, and I really appreciated learning about some of the different I just went blank. Different groups of people that live in the town of Tabor. I also attended the Winter Festival that was put on by the Tabor Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the town of Tabor. And as Councillor Sorensen said earlier, it was very well done and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the meetings I'm required to attend. That includes the FCSS meeting. Nothing new to report there. I attended the Tabor Exhibition Association meeting last Wednesday, I believe it was, and I commended them on their ability to stay afloat during this COVID-19 tribulation. That's all.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, attended all the meetings that were required of me. I attended the Tabor Library Board, and I have to commend the Library Board for purchasing. They had a grant, and so they purchased a ton of skates and helmets, and they even got some what's it called, snowshoeing supplies. And so for people that don't have access to that or can't afford it, that it is at the library. They have a ton of kid sizes and even some adult sizes for the members of the community to go in and use. So I commend them for doing that. I also attended the AUMA conference up in Edmonton, which was a lot of fun, and it was a good experience for me as it was my first time. Yeah, and I also attended the Winter Festival, which was always a joy and fun for the kids. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Changing it up, are you? In regards to attending all the meetings, I attended most of them. I was ill there for a week, so one of them I didn't attend, but I did attend counselor training, virtually attended the AUMA convention. I attended some training at the police station and with Chief Abella, and attended the Arts and Heritage and the Winter Festival again. And congratulations to the library. I think they raised some necessary funds. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Rudd?
The only committee that's been active since coming on council has been the Tabor District Housing Foundation. I've attended their meeting and seen what work is underway there and participating there and sitting on their HR committee to do evaluations of staff. And speaking of the Doors to the World event that was held, put on by Tabor District Committee Adult Learning Association, council should know that the town is not represented on that board. However, I've been sitting as the chair of that board for the past several years and I'm continuing to do so, and was very pleased with that conference that was put on as well, and they did a really good job. Got some great people over there working hard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended all the required meetings I was appointed to on different committees. Enjoy being on all of them. The MPC is one of my favorite, and Recreation Department meeting. The Winter Festival was fantastic again here in Tabor. It really highlights our town. And that's about it. I do have a question for Councillor McLean. Was the AMA well attended in person, or it's quite a good event, so glad you were able to go.
Yeah, the building was basically full. Yeah, it was pretty well attended.
All right, thank you. And for myself, I also attended many meetings and required document signing within the administration building and elsewhere. Also attended the Halloween Howler. It was very well done, very well attended. Also attended the Door to the World event. Again, very well done and very well received and very informational and cultural. As a result, I did also attend the Veterans Dinner, November the 10th, as well as the November 11th ceremony. Attended the Winterfest opening as well with the fire department's help with the tree lighting ceremony. It's very well done again. Thank you so much for that as well. And all involved to make that very successful event happen. And I also attended the jingle sale at the community center on Saturday. It was also very well attended, very well received. That would be my report. With that, someone prepared to make a motion for information purposes? Councillor Bruin.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that council accepts the mayor and council reports for information.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 611, standing item council requests. Mr. Tebow.
So this portion of our meeting, the standing items, folks get to bring things forward. We do have the one item that was spoken to earlier in today's meeting, being the downtown sidewalks. So we've just applied the completed to it.
All right, thank you. I know Councillor Sorensen definitely has one item for sure, if not more. Councillor Sorensen?
Yeah, because you attended the jingle sale. There is a need for a ladies' washroom sign to be posted in the Civic Center. There's a men's washroom sign, but not a ladies' washroom sign.
All right, with that, we requiring a motion on that necessarily, or just able to take care of that oversight without a motion scenario? Mr. Tebow?
We'll just record it on the standing items. It looks like the last one did have a motion assigned to it, so it is helpful if there's motions assigned.
All right, Councillor Sorensen?
I make a motion that administration or Public Works installs a ladies' washroom sign for the Civic Center.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
One thing that was also brought up is the need for perhaps an ATM in that building. I know there's one in the arena, but all the shoppers were always in the Civic Center, and I know during Cornfest also, people are always asking where the nearest ATM machine is, so if I could just ask for some information.
All right, Mr. Tebow, are you up on that whatsoever?
I'm afraid I'm not up on that. I don't know what it would take to look into it. I know we do have, I assume we would have agreements in place for the ones that are there, so we would have to look into it a little further if we wanted to move things or to add to or take away from things.
Just to clarify, Councilor Sorensen, you're looking for, the ask was to have one in the Civic Center auditorium area somewhere itself?
Yeah, in the
Okay.
actual.
Okay, and we do have one in the arena, I believe, right? Is that where you're referring to?
Yeah, we were always directed
Okay.
during Corn Fest in the summer
Okay,
to
yeah.
use that one.
Fair enough. There's enough activity out there. You're at the Civic Center. Auditorium is definitely probably more than reasonable to look into. So I guess recreation would be up on that, obviously, if that's part of their department. I'm not sure when that came up last, to be honest, but that's been there for several years. Maybe our finance department would know. Donna or John, any information on that whatsoever? Oh, okay. Okay, fair enough. So with that, we could have administration looking at it a little further. You would need a motion on that ask as well there, Mr. Tebow?
Yes, please.
All right. Councilor Reddy had a question also?
Just perhaps some signage would help direct people to where the ATM is. It's not that far apart, but if more people knew where it was, then maybe that could be arranged. Just a suggestion.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bruin?
I think, Mr. Mayor, that the ATMs are kind of a private enterprise. It's up to an individual if they think there's money to be made by putting an ATM in the community center. I think it's well needed, but I don't think it's the town's responsibility to ensure one's there. It's someone to come in and put one in on their own.
All right, thank you. I think at the very least, if Councilor Sorens are willing to put forth some form of motion in that regard, that could be investigated accordingly. Councilor Sorensen?
Could I just make a motion that administration looks, or the town looks into the cost or the contract involved in perhaps getting one placed in the Civic Center?
An ATM?
Yeah, an
in the
ATM,
Civic Center.
sorry.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Any other standing item requests? Councilor McLean?
I think Councillor Sorensen was going to bring this up, but I'll bring it up about that administration looks into the cost of lighting and or for the downtown area with a correlation of the sidewalks, that we just get some more information on the cost of that.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Any other standing item requests? All right, seeing none whatsoever, that's got all the motions taken care of. I believe we're ahead of the game there, on track for now. All right, with that, our delegation here at 5 o'clock, so I just asked for to have a recess until 5 p.m. where we can reconvene the meeting. Councilor Beckering?
Mr. Mayor, also move. Thank you.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We're live, Al? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, if we could reconvene the meeting, please. And on to item 7, delegations, item 7.1, Alberta sugar beet growers. Mr. Tebow.
We've got Melody here to go through a presentation for us.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for giving us time today on your agenda to bring forth to you a topic of hot discussion, it seems to be lately. So my president, Gary Tekeriak, was going to join me tonight, but he has a sore throat, so is doing the right thing by staying away in the times of COVID. But he does send his regrets, because this is a topic that we're going to discuss tonight that's near and dear to his heart. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Melody Garner-Skiba. I'm the Executive Director of the Alberta Sugar Beet Growers. We represent over 200 local farm families that produce the only source of 100% Canadian sugar. You being in the town of Tabor, I'm sure you're very well familiar with the sugar beet industry, so I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of stats tonight, but there is some ground that I want to cover with you as we start a journey to an end point that is long overdue for this country and more importantly for this industry. So tonight I want to take you on a journey that is going to illustrate how this industry can help us recover post-pandemic, where we can contribute jobs and GDP contributions, both economically, provincially, here as well as federally. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, thanks. So tonight we're going to cover 4 main areas: where we're currently at right now as a sugar beet industry, where we'd like to go, how we're going to get there, so the roadmap, and who we'd like to come along with us for this journey. So if you can keep going for me, Darren. Thanks. To slide number 3. So as I said, town of Tabor, you truly understand the importance of the sugar beet industry and the refined sugar industry here in Tabor, the amount of jobs that it contributes, the GDP contribution. We just recently actually did an economic impact assessment of the sugar beet industry, and we contribute over 2,100 jobs to the local economy down here and over $248 million worth of GDP. While that may seem small when you compare it to the crops like wheat and barley, we're 28,000 acres. We're a small crop. We punch well above our weight with over $8,800 worth per acre of that GDP contribution. As I mentioned, we're the sole source of 100% Canadian sugar. We supply, though, only 8 to 10% at maximum of the domestic market. 90% of the sugar we are consuming in Canada is raw cane sugar that is imported from Vietnam, Guatemala, and it benefits other farmers. It does not benefit our Canadian and, more importantly, our Albertan farmers here. We want to change that. We are currently allowed to export 20,000 tons to the U.S. through the Free Trade Agreement, CUSMA, USMCA, NAFTA, whatever you want to call it. That one we were able to double, which was a welcome relief in those trade negotiations. But that is because the U.S. government asked for that. It is not because the Canadian government asked for that preference to be given to beet sugar. The U.S. government and the sugar beet growers here asked for that. As I mentioned before, we punch above our weight with our GDP contribution and the jobs that we supply. And more importantly, our last thing that we've just completed is that we have been certified sustainable at the silver level through the third-party farm sustainability assessment tool. So this just guarantees that how we are producing the beet sugar here from our sugar beets is done in an ethical and sustainable manner that can contribute greatly to this economy as well as to this country. Next slide, please, Darren. What we're proposing today from our present location is to get to a place where we have a domestic sugar policy. Now, this ask is not unique. This ask is very simple. It exists in the US, it exists in Europe, it actually exists in every major trading nation except Canada. We are the only one that does not have a domestic sugar policy. And that is why I'm here today, is to ask for your help as we progress on this towards this destination. We believe by asking our federal government to develop a domestic sugar policy that we can increase food security for Canadians. I'm sure you all saw it during COVID. Sugar flew off the shelves. People started baking more. Well, what happens if the situation on our West Coast continues right now? Those boatloads of raw cane sugar, where are they? They're out in the port. We have no access to them, but yet we can do more here and grow more here at home. We can also increase our economic and rural development. By increasing our ability to grow more sugar beets, we can employ more people, we can increase our GDP, and we can contribute to your local economy in a much better manner. We will also reduce the impact on climate change. I would venture and I would put up any one of our sugar beet producers against any Guatemalan cane farmer. I don't mean to single them out, but our environmental and social standards are better, period. And now we've got the proof to prove that with our third-party FSA sustainability verification. Not only that, we know our province is looking to diversify their economy. We're trying to get a bit off that oil and gas roller coaster, and agriculture has an important role to play in that, and sugar beets play an important role in the ag, especially here in southern Alberta. And lastly, I would like to stand before you one day and actually say that our farmers are on a level competitive playing field with the farmers of Guatemala and Vietnam. Now, I want to be clear tonight. We are not asking for a subsidy. We are not looking for direct support in money. That's what happens in other countries. They get paid a guaranteed wage, a guaranteed income level. That's not what we're asking for. Our sugar policy has nothing to do with a direct subsidy. Instead, if you can go to the next slide, please, Darren, what we're asking for is a domestic sugar policy that will actually be twofold. Number one, we will manage imports. Currently, 1.2 million tons of raw cane sugar is imported into this nation for use. What we're saying is, you know what? Let's not let 1.2 million tons in. Let's maybe only let 900,000 tons in and slowly and gradually build up the amount of sugar that is refined from beets. Because to be fair, our refiners have set up some solid infrastructure here. They have made a commitment to the industry. We need to encourage them to make a further investment in the industry. And by doing so, we don't want to pull the rug out from underneath of them. We want to work with them and encourage them for a gradual and slow investment to move the needle up. That's what this domestic sugar policy is asking for. It's asking for a restriction on the tons of raw cane sugar brought in. It's also going to ask for an increase in the percentage of sugar-containing products that are made using beet sugar. Your hot chocolate mix, probably cane sugar. That just makes no sense to us as farmers of why we do not have the ability to increase the percentage of sugar-containing products that actually use beet sugar. A Canadian product should be Canadian. It should benefit the whole supply chain, in our opinion. The second part of the domestic sugar policy that we're looking for is a prioritization in the sugar beet exports. Much like CUSMA and NAFTA, where the priority for the export market is beet sugar, that's the only free trade agreement that outlines that. The rest of the export market can be filled by raw cane sugar that's brought in and refined. How does that benefit Canada? That benefits the farmers in other countries. We are not receiving the full value of the supply chain by allowing us to trade away those commodities. So we're asking for a prioritization in all future free trade agreements that any exports be beet sugar. Truly 100% Canadian sugar. Now, folks, I'm not here tonight just on a whim. This isn't an idea that came to us just in the middle of the night and said, hey, let's ask for this. We actually hired Saracon Consulting, a well-known, reputable agri-economic firm, and they actually did a complete analysis and created a white paper for us on this very topic. And this is where this is coming out of. This is not coming from just the farmers. This is coming from economists that have looked at it and said, this could make sense for Canada. The challenge is, if you can go to the next slide, please, Darren. The challenge is for us to make this kind of fundamental change, to ask for this type of policy, we need a lot of players in alignment with us when we make that ask to the federal government. So over the past 4 months, what we've been doing as an industry is we've been approaching municipalities like yourselves to ask for a simple letter of support that we can then take to the federal government and say, this is a priority for Canada. More importantly, this is a priority for Alberta. We would like to see you develop a domestic sugar policy. So far, we have received letters of support from the MD of Tabor, Lethbridge County, and 40 Mile County. We have also begun conversations with our ministers provincially. We met with Minister Horner here late last week, and he expressed interest in us moving this forward and to lend support. Our game plan here is very simple. We want to make sure that we have the support of all of our municipalities, the province of Alberta, and the province of Ontario, because there are sugar beets grown in Ontario, but they're shipped across the line. We want to get all of our letters of support so that when we go to Minister Ng, we've got the full package saying, It's not just the farmers in southern Alberta, it's the provinces, it's industry, it's our municipalities that understand of this. We've also met with various senators about this, and they have told us that they would welcome this bill and shepherd it in Senate once it got passed. We've got one of our local MLAs that is willing to write a private member's bill about this, as well as we've engaged with the Liberal caucus on this to see if we can't get traction there. So the wheels are moving on this, and the pandemic has really brought this to light because more Canadians have decided they want to know where their food's coming from, how it's produced, and they want to support local. So for us, the pandemic actually was a bit of an eye-opener because it opened that door which was previously closed, and it will hopefully allow us to walk through that, open it some more, walk through it, and get some kind of domestic sugar policy in place. So tonight, that is why I'm here. I am here to ask for the Town of Tabor's support on this initiative, for a letter of support as we move forward in our plea to the federal minister to create a domestic sugar policy and treat our farmers equally like every other sugar beet farmer and cane farmer in the world. I'd entertain questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate your presentation. And any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Melody. Very, very eloquent. I know this has been going around the circle for a long, long, long time, and it's strictly political in my view. Are you aware of any area in Canada, Southern Ontario, for example, that's perhaps thinking about starting a sugar beet industry if there's a domestic policy?
Absolutely. So we've actually reached out to the American Sugar Beet Growers Association, and they do have definite interest in this. And for us, as sugar beet farmers in southern Alberta, we don't see a problem with that because we're at only 8 to 10%. They could actually supply the eastern seaboard with a Canadian product, and we could supply more of the western seaboard. So there is impetus, and they are coming on board with us because we understand it being a federal policy, Councillor Beckering, it would help us if we had Ontario alongside with us.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Rudd.
You had mentioned that there's additional capacity, so glad to hear that more acres could go if it's a protected market. What kind of corporate commitment do we have, or do we have any? Because there's the big factory. If it wasn't there, I don't know what the beet industry would look like, and so I would think they would be a passenger, if you will, as well. And any comment on that?
Great question, Councillor Wood, and I can tell you this, it's not as simple as I would have hoped in that conversation. Because, we're really fortunate with Rogers and their beet plant, but they also have a raw cane plant. So that's why we have to almost encourage the investment into the beet plant here. Now, we have been told that they do have the ability to ramp up some capacity. So there is that option. We have also been told by several other companies that there may be an impetus for an additional refiner to come. And I wouldn't say, I would say that as growers, besides refined sugar, we understand that we have one customer, and it's an important customer. And I want to make this crystal clear. We value Lantic greatly, and we value that partnership. But at the end of the day, our growers want to grow more acres. That's my job, is to get them growing more acres. So however we need to do that, that's why we're here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your commentary because board of directors are board of directors, and they make decisions. So appreciate your honesty and frankness there.
I wish it was simple. I wish I could say they're right here beside me, willing to go with this charge, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, they need some persuading.
Yes.
From us.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Broom.
Thank you, Melody, for that fantastic presentation. Your heart's in it, and I appreciate everything you say. And I speak not on behalf of council, but personally, that sugar beet industry is so important to this area. And if there's room to expand, I sure hope we can. We're almost facing the same problem we're facing with our oil. We can produce all the oil we need, but yet we will import it. And I tell you what, when I go to a restaurant, I look at every sugar package to see where it comes from. And I'm very disappointed when I see sugar cane. And very, very well done, and thank you for your presentation.
All right, thank you. Councillor Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of a follow-up question, I guess, because I keep hearkening back to the reluctance of the federal government, of course, to adopt a domestic sugar policy. So surely your association or your sugar beet grower association must have an inkling why that is.
I think in all fairness, Councillor Beckering, it's the way the industry is currently set up. We have a duopoly in Canada here, right? And I think more and more, especially with consumers demanding more Canadian, we're starting to see the parameters shift. And with that, especially around the climate change piece and the sustainability piece, that's the other impetus here that I think is different than maybe 10, 15 years ago, right? When we look back to 2009 and we transitioned to GMO seeds, right? That made us, we require less toxic chemicals, our greenhouse gas emissions are down, like we're a much more sustainable and environmentally friendly industry. And I think that's some of the language that now, well, not I think, I know that's some of the language now that's different than maybe 10, 15 years ago when this was tried. Like I said, it seems to me like there's almost a perfect storm. We have Canadians wanting local, we've got climate change and greenhouse gas emissions being a buzzword that's just kind of opened this door that, in all fairness, was firmly closed before.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you so much for your presentation. Very well done, very informative. Learned a lot, again, as always. So very much appreciated. Just a clarification question, with the 200,000 plus acres, irrigated acres, the UCB is now authorized going forward in the next several years. You talked about some expansion possibilities for this plant or an additional plant. Is that what I'm understanding? One or the other or both?
Both, actually, Mayor Prokop. So we do know in recent conversations with Lantic that finding some efficiencies, there could be an increase in plant capacity here. Would we like to see an expansion? Absolutely, we would like to see an expansion. But to drive that expansion, we need policy that almost demands that investment, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's really the trick. But there is also, we have been told this for years, I found out after the fact, that if Canada had a domestic sugar policy, there would be a lot more interest from other sugar refiners to come and play in Canada. But with the duopoly that the way it is right now and the restriction, there's just not enough room in the sandbox.
I see, I appreciate it. Thank you, that makes sense. Councillor Sorensen.
If there's no more questions, I'm willing to make a motion.
All right.
So I make the motion that council accepts the presentation from the Alberta sugar beet growers for information purposes, and that council directs administration to draft a letter of support to be signed by the mayor or designate to support the Alberta sugar beet growers and their initiative for the creation of a federal domestic sugar policy.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate your support.
All right, best of luck to you in going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How was the year, the season for beets?
It was good. It was the best harvest we've probably had in a lot of years. So we'll take it. Our sugar content was down a bit. I think the heat kind of didn't help us with that because we didn't get the cool nights. But we still delivered 876,000 tons, if I remember correctly. So we're about an average of 30.5 tons per acre, and our average sugar was about that 17.3%. So still, we should see between 120, 125,000 tons of sugar coming out. And again, harvest went well because it was dry, right? We had no snow. We had a few days where it was, in 1 week, I'm not gonna lie, Councilor Burnett, it was weird. We had a heat shutdown, and then we had a frost shutdown in a matter of 5 days. And I'm like, welcome to Southern Alberta.
I don't know a lot about sugar beets, but looking at the piles, there's some monster sugar beets coming in. And when you say 30 plus tons an acre, it amazes me. Because I remember when 20 tons was impossible.
Yeah, the 2020 club used to be the thing. Now it's the 30-20 club.
Yeah, it's really good. Well done by all the growers.
Perfect. That's great to hear. Thank you again very much.
Thank you.
All right, next is, I do have a media inquiry just out in the foyer. Any other media inquiries, Ms. Brennan? All right. Okay, with that, just asked to take a short recess, about 10 minutes. So we can reconvene into closed session, please. Motion on getting ahead of myself. Councilor Bruin.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that we take a 10-minute break and reconvene in closed session.
Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.